Well, delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast for a second time is Finn Worthington, and Finn is a young chap that's been through issues of addiction with ketamine and now doing some incredible work. And this is kind of a second part podcast. Finley and I did one earlier, so do check that one out as well. We did one earlier in the year in February, so we're just going to pick up and see what kind of things have been going on. Finley, it's great to get you back on. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, and thanks for having me back on, Alex. I'm good, really good. Very busy. Since we last spoke, there's so much that's gone on, and all positive, all good stuff. But yeah, a little bit overwhelming at times with it, to be completely honest. But yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. People who have watched or listened to the first podcast will be wondering how's Finley doing? Before we talk about others, how are you getting on, Finley? You've come through this, and some days better than others, or just tell somebody what it's like to be in recovery, and as the days and weeks go by.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's life. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to say you get clean and you jump up out of bed every morning and you're dancing around and you're buzzing because you're not. Some days you have bad days, some days you have great days. I think there can be a little bit of a misconception about getting sober, and I did it this time round. I had these sort of mad expectations of I was going to be amazing all day, every day, and nothing could ever bother me. That type of thing. And you quickly realise that you just go back to life. But look, it's 100 times better. Not 100 times; it's 99% times better than it were when I would, use them. So yeah, not to sort of put a negative spin on it or anything. Some days are absolutely amazing, and I never had one day where I was half good in addiction. So for anyone who is struggling, sobriety is the way forward, and there's some absolutely amazing stuff that you can do, and opportunities and all the stuff that comes with it. But yeah, some days, Alex, some days they're not as good as others, and I
Yeah,
think that's just life in general.
it is. Yeah. And you and I have both been kind of in some ways front and center, aren't we, about ketamine, definitely in Burnley, if not further afield. Just has that surprised you, Finley, what the reaction has been to this issue of ketamine? I mean, you've been in the national news, you've been on national media. Just say a bit about how you felt about that.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a mad journey, really. I've sort of been catapulted, is the way I'd say it. I've come from addiction. I got clean and sober, and I wanted to try and use my experience to help and set a group up, and then it's just spiraled. The amount of messages I get in a week, and emails and phone calls, and it's a proper sort of service business that I've got now. And the opportunities that have come up along the way are absolutely mint. So sometimes it's a little bit surreal, really. And I don't really look back, and it's quite. Some people think it's a bad thing. I don't know. I don't really look back too much now at where I were and how far I've come. I'm sort of now focused on, right, what do I do next?
Mm,
How can I make what we're doing with Cares better and bigger and stronger and more professional.
mm.
Um, so yeah, but it's been a mad old journey, Alex. Really, to say where I were this time last year, or even 7 or 8 months ago, to where I am now. It's chalk and cheese, massive, massive difference.
Has it surprised you how many people have come forward and said, look, I've got a problem, or my child's got a problem? Has that surprised you at all, or was it what you were expecting?
Um, think Yeah, it has surprised me. It has, at the fact of sort of how many messages we get, at Kez, and me personally as well. It's unbelievable on a daily basis. Some days 30, 40 messages, that's without all the other stuff, the sort of admin side stuff, what I've got to do. So yeah, it does surprise me. It does. However, I am. I'm not going to say I'm fully aware of the size of the problem because I don't think anyone is. If you want me to be truthful, I think it's bigger than anyone actually anticipates. However, yeah, I think there's still way more people that are struggling in silence, but I think the amount of people that are reaching out is really good. So it's a little bit of a bit contradictory, really, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Do you concur with me, Finley? We've been in different meetings together and spoke to different same people, but maybe at different times. I think there is a will uh, for things to get better, but there's still, like you said, there's a lot of work to do, isn't there? There's a lot of education. There's a lot of gaps. I describe as the bridge links as kind of paper thin, and they need foundation. But there is. I've been really encouraged that there is a desire to address this. Have you found? Do you feel? Do you agree?
yeah, 100% there is. Most people, most professionals I speak to are all on a similar sort of page. Some of them are in sectors where they probably should know they should know way more than what they do,
Yeah,
but they'll still openly admit that they're behind, they're uneducated, they're unaware, but they'll say that, look, we're being pushed for this training and we're being pushed to look at this and that. So things are being done. I do believe it's on the right path. I just think there's a lot more. I won't, no, not a lot more to do, but there's a little bit more to go till we get to somewhere where I think it's more of a balanced out sort of ratio of recovery and addiction. And I
yeah,
think, again, you can't have unreal expectations, Alex, can we? Because addiction's addiction. People die in addiction, people don't get clean, and some people do, some are going to relapse. So I don't think we're ever going to get rid of this problem. I don't think in a year or two's time it's going to disappear. I hope it does, and I hope I'm wrong. But when you look at history and other substances, there's not many that disappear, is there? Yeah, which is the sad side of it. But hopefully, with the awareness and education being pushed and pushed and pushed, less of the new generation are starting to take it and have a little bit more fear around it.
yeah.
And the numbers do, as the years go on, start to drop.
How important do you think that original documentary we were in, the Generation K documentary, was? I mean, I've had so many people contact me and still contacting me about that. I feel like it's opened up a conversation, particularly, parents who've come forward to me, maybe kids in your case, Finn, who've actually just come in and shared their problem, and in many ways that's been quite cathartic for them, and it's been good for me just to be able to be able to just listen to somebody's problem and say, look, you're not alone. There's other people going through this, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. It might not feel like that at the moment, but through the stuff you've done and through your own experience, Finn, you've demonstrated that. Would you agree with what I've said there, or?
Yeah, I think everything that's been done is equally as important. Um, some of the bigger names aren't they? They're picking up on stuff, and we've done stuff recently, and there's been stuff done. I think every single thing that's being done, every story that's being shared, and every bit of information is equally as important.
Mm.
And I think with all them collected as one, that's where it makes an impact. There's quite a lot of people on a similar journey to us who are working separately. Now, I think when you get people together and you get services together and even your BBC, ITV and all that sharing resources and figures and stats, I think that's where the difference is made when people are reading off the same sort of hymn sheet, no pun intended. That's when I think the difference is made.
And one of the things you've been doing, Finley, which I was privileged enough to be able to join you, was you've been going into schools, haven't you? Tell us about that experience and what you've been telling kids and what been hearing back from teenagers across East Lancs.
Yeah, so it's a really bittersweet sort of thing, because I've had some amazing feedback, and I know from sort of conversations I've had recently, from talks I've done months ago, things have sunk in. I'm not saying I've changed hundreds of lives or I've made a massive difference, but seeds have been planted and conversations have been had off the back of things that I've said. So for me, that's to me that's a job done. The other side of the coin is some of the stories that I'm hearing. You was at a school with me, Alex. I won't mention schools, and I know I had a conversation with a young person, and I don't want to go too much into it because people, if anyone who knew where we were and blah blah blah. But there's a young person who was 13-year-old, and he'd been taking Ket for around a year and sniffing 3.5 grams with the self and a couple of the friends. And I said, "What do you know about ketamine? You know, what damage does it do?" Asked him some questions, and he just laughed. He laughed. He said, "It's not good for you, is it?" And that was the maximum level of information that he knew that it weren't good for him, you know. And the shock in that, it's like, you imagine how many other young people are doing it that have, again, lack of information, and to them they're just dabbling with something, they're having a bit of fun. They don't realise what they're taking is literally deadly, over a small space of time. If it's not deadly, the repercussions that it's going to have on your body, massive. So yeah, really, really bittersweet, Alex. You know, again, some really good stuff's come from it. Some good messages have been shared, and but at the same time, it also you're gonna hear the stories of why the stats are like they are when we talk about people 12, 13-year-old taking it, and the families, the backgrounds they're coming from, and the trauma they've got, and all the sort of stuff that we hear people speak about. You're seeing it, you know, first hand. And in terms of what I do when I go into the schools, I keep it dead simple. You know, all I do is I go in and I speak to them as Finn. You know, I speak to them like I would have wanted to have been spoke to when I was in school. You know, I don't go in and try and patronise or pretend I am someone I'm not, or that I'm a professional. I get on a level with them and I talk to them. And I just explain where I've been, and I give them some of the hard hitting stories that I've personally had along my journey, along with stories that I've heard, from parents and users of our groups, etc. And yeah, the results that we get are quite good. Usually, I'd say 9 times out of 10, as soon as, excuse me, as soon as I sort of get into the story, the room's silent, and I've heard a few teachers say to me, "You could hear a pin drop," and that's the sort of reaction that I want. I don't want fun and games and jokes and people thinking it's, I want hard hitting real stuff where people are thinking, that's not a drug I want to take, or if they're taking it, I need some support, and then I make it clear about signposting, where to go, where we are, and yeah, just offer them a little bit of a laugh line if they've already took it, or they're already wrapped up in it.
I have to say, Finley, it was a privilege to be able to sit and listen to you, and whilst I'm passionate about the subject, I'm a 55-year-old vicar, and young kids don't want to hear it from me. But for somebody who's had a lived experience, I was really moved by one kid who walked in with all the swagger. You'll know who I'm talking about, and eventually the kid worked their way from the back of the class to the front of the class, from being the clown to being the most attentive student in the room.
Yeah,
Was extremely powerful, and it opened up some not just interesting conversations with the child, but also with the teachers, and highlighting some of the issues and concerns that they're faced with on a daily basis. Finley, what does it do for you to be able to do that? Talk about yourself for a minute. What the level of satisfaction that must give you to be able to do that must be huge.
yeah. Again, Alex, it's bittersweet. It's nice to know that I've had conversations or said something that's triggered something in their mind to think I can be honest about this now. There's a space now that's safe for me to come and open up about what's going on. That's amazing. Of course, it is, because there might not have been another opportunity for that to happen. You might have been another 2 or 3 years before it happened. And this young person then has got another X amount of time taking ketamine and whatever else they're doing. So yeah, it's really powerful in that sense that me who's just come from addiction. I'm no one special. I'm not a professional. I don't. I've just got a bit of lived experience and I'm trying to help. So it is quite a nice feeling. But then you've got the flip side of you know of the actual emotion that you feel when you're hearing these kids talking. And look, we hear a lot about young children and kids and teenagers and how the problems throughout the board. But for me personally, a lot of the attention does go into the younger people with the schools and stuff. So that's why I do talk a lot about it, and it is a lot of where my attention goes. Um, yeah, it's sad, Alex. It's sad, to be truthful. I don't think not much of the positive stuff that I should take from it. In the fact of he's come and he's been able to talk, and I've done
Mm.
something where it's allowed. I don't really look at that. I don't. I look at, wow, that kid's struggling, and I hear where they're coming from. I hear the backgrounds. I hear the stuff they've got going on at home, and some of them I've spoke about it on other interviews. You've got young kids, 12, 13, 14 year old, who have give up on life. They've give up because they've no positive influences. They feel like they've got no hope. Nobody believes in them. There's nobody around them giving them that support and that push to go out and try things, and and believe in themselves. So they find in a substance what they find sort of peace in, and they're just taking it and rotting away, and they're almost giving up at that age. Sad stuff.
It really is. I mean, I've talked about this, and to see a young person's potential kind of almost just drift down the river, it is very chastening. It's really upsetting to see, and I think I don't know about you, but that becomes the driver, doesn't it? For me, it's like I want less people to feel like that. I want to see more people be aspirational and know that they can do better. Finley,
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that, because this ketamine issue has gone more national, if that's the right word, is that I thought this was a Burnley thing, or well, to begin with, I thought it was a one-off thing. Then I thought it was a Burnley thing, and then I thought it was a Manchester thing. It's clearly a national issue, isn't it? I'm sure you've had correspondence and contacts from people across the country, and what interests me is that there are some areas that seem to be awake and alive to it, but there are others that are just kind of got their heads buried in the sand. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah, 100%. And do you know what? I wouldn't even say national, Alex. I'd say worldwide to an
Mm.
extent. We've had people on our Zooms from America, Tunisia, um, where else? All sorts of random little places across the world. So America, for example, I know we're English and we're looking at the problem here, but it's just to sort of give people a scope, size of the problem. So in America, there was a lady that come on, and they're at the sort of stage, by the sounds of it, as where we were in 2021. The problem's there. It's in the woodwork. There's a few people talking now. People are ignoring it. That's where they sounds like they're at certain parts of America, obviously. And yeah, so it's not just England or around here. It's worldwide. But to sort of bring it back to more around here because we can't that's out of our hands, isn't it? But yeah, to answer your question, Alex, 100%. It seems there is some little towns and places where maybe it's not an issue, maybe it is, and again, people are in the woodworks. But the conversations I'm having now with people from literally all kinds of mad little towns, places I've never heard of, Lake District, Wales, Scotland, you know, all over, and it's just popped up everywhere. And again, to me, I know the issue was there in 2021. Maybe it's grown, it's got a lot bigger than it were, but it was there on a big scale. It was just that people didn't have the consequences, so they weren't speaking out because at that point they were still having fun.
And when I've raised this, in the political domains, some people say, "Well, Alex, you need to leave it to the experts." Well, I think I say this with humility. I think I am an expert, and I know you are. I think there's a lot to be said and should be listened to from real life anecdotal evidence. Your testimony is powerful as anything I've seen, and so where we are now with reclassification, where do you sit with reclassification, Finley, at the minute? Are you still feeling that a reclassification to a Class A drug would be the right step?
Um, to me, it still amazes me, Alex, that these conversations even need to be had. I can't understand how. I know you're doing a lot with pushing it to be reclassified, and there's a lot of other people. It doesn't make sense to me how it's even a conversation. It should be a class A. There's no, I don't know. I struggle for words on it because it's like it's killing people. There's kids in hospital left, right, and centre. There's adults in hospital as well. Not to forget, we've got overdoses happening left, right, and centre because of what's being put in it. We've got rehabs. I think the rate's doubled. Something. I looked at figures the other day. I'm not the best with numbers, but you only have to look at rehab admissions in people under 20, from 18 to 25, with ketamine. It's gone through the roof. So who's looking at this now and saying, well, we can't reclassify it because of X, Y, and Z? Doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. However, a bit of an unpopular opinion on the matter. For me personally, I don't spend too much time looking at that reclassification stuff, Alex. And it's not to say people shouldn't be. You know, I know you do a lot with it, and thank you for doing that. You know, and it's amazing and it needs doing. It's a great job what you're doing with it. But for me personally, I look at the other sort of. I put all my energy into the other areas of it. You know, into like the actual sort of looking at getting people clean and where can we signpost and the meetings and all that. I just think the amount of resources and time and energy that's been put into the reclassification at the minute is just crazy because, again, who's ticking a box saying that this should be a Class B drug? You know, who's not seeing what's going on? They want to come and sit in one of our groups or come and drop in a school with us and have these conversations with these young people and see the size of it and see how many lives are being ruined off this drug and then maybe rethink about it. Um, you know, it's crazy, crazy.
Finn, one of the things we haven't touched on in our previous discussions is what are the teachers saying to you? What are the teachers in the schools up and down Lancashire and beyond saying? What's their feeling about this?
Quite similar to us. They're all very new to it. You're not all of them. Some of them, funnily enough, I speak to quite a few who've got sons and daughters who are in the position I were, and millions of other people are who are, you know, struggling, don't know where to go for help, passing blood, all the stuff that comes with it. Quite a few though that we speak to have newly become aware of the size of the problem, and they're seeing it in kids, and they're seeing it in the behaviours and all the sort of stuff that. I thought there were a ghost there then. Tried to
And
phone.
if anybody's watching or just listening my dogs have just opened the door. Carry on, Finn.
um, yeah, teachers. So I lost my train of thought then, Alex. Sorry. So yeah, teachers. A lot of them are still quite sort of new to the idea
Yeah.
of it, and a lot of them are saying, "We've had one recently. I've gone in and done a talk, and they've asked me to go back and do it with staff." You know, there's quite a lot that are asking me to do the staff talk first, then pupils.
Mhm.
So there's still a massive lack of education in the staff. But there is quite a few that have got children that are suffering from ketamine addiction. So bit of a mixed bag, really. Bit of a
Yeah.
mixed bag, and I think again it's on the right path. It's going the right places. Just for me, it needs speeding up. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
And what about the young people that you're talking to? What are they saying to you? I mean, you've said that that there's a gap in their kind of uh their kind of social circle, and aspiration and all that. But what are they actually saying to you? Are they coming to you just in desperation? Are they coming to you with a bit of a swag? Or is it peer pressure that's sending them? What's going on in the groups that you're doing?
I think most of it's desperation. You know, I'd say 95% of the people that come through into any of our groups or even message me or whatever, it's desperation, Alex, because of the pain they're in, because of the consequences, and all that sort of stuff. There is a few conversations that I have where it's quite apparent that, to put it bluntly, and I say this as someone who's been in this exact position, the younger people, children, teenagers, kids, however you want to name them, aren't as bothered as the parents are. You know, the parents are the ones putting the pressure on, seeing the children as they are and seeing the lives go down the pan, and they're putting the pressure on. You need to do this, you need to do that, and it does become quite apparent. And again, I say that because that was me in 2021. I went to rehab and did a full rehab and proper lip service, showing everyone that I wanted to change, but reality were I didn't. It was just because of my mum and dad and my family, and the pain physical pain I was in. So yeah, again, most of them it's desperation because this drug don't take long to grab hold of you, and it don't take long for you to start passing blood and bits of your bladder and your kidneys to be getting shooting pains and your liver to pack in and all the stuff that comes along with it. So it's a very short-lived addiction for most people. You get people who've been doing it 10 years, and it shocks me because it's very few and far between. But when I'll ask them, I say, how
Yeah.
are you still stood in front of me?
Yeah.
Crazy. I did it for, I was bad for probably five, I don't know. I can't really put too much time stuff on it, but I was bad for a good few years. And it got to coming into rehab this time, and I felt like if I'd have carried on for another few months, I'd have had a bag on my hip, my liver had have packed in, and all that. I'd have got the top end consequences. So I don't know how they're doing it. I really don't.
Yeah. And something I'm really pleased about, Finley, is that you've got some financial backing now, haven't you? And that must be affirming for what you're doing. And it means that people are taking you seriously. They're taking you as seriously as you are taking ketamine. And that must be an encouragement for you.
Yeah, it is, Alex. I've been doing this now quite a few months, and I've been literally up and down country to an extent. The meetings I've done, hundreds of meetings, and doubled. I don't know, 50 plus schools maybe. I don't know. I couldn't tell you figures. I don't really keep count and stuff, but the hours that I've put in, I've put a lot of hours into it. The social media side of stuff again. Some days I can spend 5, 6, 7 hours on my phone to emails and messages and just trying to have conversations and signpost. And then we've got the group chats, and there's a lot of work that's got into it, Alex. And I'm not saying this to try and sing my own praises or to get well done's off people, because genuinely that's not what I want. But to have somebody notice what we're doing and to take it seriously and think, you know what, this lad's he's been there, he's done it, and he's trying and he's making enough of a difference for me to back him. But yeah, that's the biggest compliment that I can have. I don't want to say too much on it. I don't want to start dropping names and explanations on stuff. I don't know how much we should be saying, but obviously me and you both know the sort of story with it, and then it's absolutely amazing that somebody wants to do that. And yeah, again, these conversations about funding and stuff. I mean, we've had £1,000 up to now in maybe 6 months. I'm going to maybe 5, 6 months or whatever been set up. I've covered all the fuel everywhere. I've covered, the time, the cost of dinners and all that sort of stuff that comes with it. And I've never took a penny off anyone because I'm not in it for money. The amount of people that have said, how much do you charge to come and do this talk in our school or to do this? And I don't charge, I don't want to charge people. So yeah, when the funding pops up and someone wants to back us, it's amazing. It really is, Alex.
Well, I'm not your dad, but I feel very proud of what you're doing, Philly. You're doing absolutely brilliant, and keep it going. Just, I think we did this in the first one, but first of all, if there's parents out there who might watch this or listen to it and think, I think my child might be using ketamine, what would you say to them?
It's a tough one really, because they've just sort of said that the child's got to, I don't really like saying child, but the young person's got to be desperate. But what I'd say is there's hope. I had this conversation yesterday. There is always hope.
Mm.
If you watch, my first, I think I talked about it a little bit more in my first podcast, the level of desperation I was at, the level of pain and suicide and anxiety and depression and all the stuff that comes along with any addiction. I'd give up on life. And my parents and my family just stood by me enough, and they sort of reminded me, not every day, but enough, that they loved me and that they were there for me when I was ready. And luckily, touch wood, I'm never out of the woods. I think this time round I was ready, and I did what I needed to do. Get engaging with services. We're on social media, Ketamine Education Services. That's our logo. Give us a message. I know Alex. I don't really want to put your name forward, but Alex again, he knows a lot of people, and he's got, like he said, he's got a lot of expertise in it, from the things he's seen and the stories he's heard and the places he's been, and all that type of stuff. So reach out, find the support, find your services, get yourselves to the AACA, NA meetings. There was a little bit of a miscommunication a while back. People thought that I was saying that they don't work or one thing and another. I did the 12 steps in through the AA meetings. I had to identify as an alcoholic for 3 months, and I got a lot from it. I don't do it today, but it gave me what I needed at that point. So
Mm.
find meetings, get connected with people who are trying to get clean or who are clean. That tap into their knowledge. Get
Yeah.
out and about. Don't be sat in your room on your Xbox thinking that things are going to change, because they won't.
No.
Nobody's going to come in and magically change you as a person if you sat on Call of Duty or FIFA or whatever you're playing. You've got to get up, find the help. You've got to go out, get the fresh air, get the exercise, and go and earn it. Is the top and bottom of it. And yeah, for family and friends, we run a support group on a Monday after our users group. If you're struggling, you don't know where to turn, you need some support, jump on there. We've got group chats. Just give us a message, and we'll hopefully signpost you or help you as much as we can.
And just final question, Finn, is maybe a slightly different angle. What about a child who might be in a peer group where they're all at it doing ketamine and they really want to break out from that group? What would your advice be to that young person? Because that's a little bit different, isn't it? Sometimes it's just fear of not being cool anymore or not being in the group. Just say something about that.
Yeah, it's an hard one. It's quite a while since I was sort of young and in big groups of people and all that sort of stuff. I know I'm only 25, but a lot of stuff's gone on since I was 15, 16, so it seems like a lifetime ago. I understand how important friends are and your mates and being cool and keeping up with cool kids, all that sort of stuff. We all did it when we were younger, and we all understand it. I think what you've got to look at is the severity of the problem, and you know what? Have a look around, have a look at your friendship group, and I'll guarantee most people, when they actually have a good look at it, the people who they think are their friends are the people who they're using with, who are giving them more drugs and bailing them drugs and buying and selling. And the reality of it is, a lot of people's friends, they're not actually the friends, the people they're using with, and people they've got comfortable being around.
Mm.
Um, you've got to take yourself out of them positions. You've got to take yourself out of them circles. You're going to struggle so much to get clean and sober if you're knocking around with five other ketamine users or drug addicts or alcoholics, because if you've had an issue with it, I don't like saying this, it sounds very straightforward, but you're an addict. If you're an addict, you cannot knock around with other addicts, because you're going to use, top and bottom of it. So you've got to get away from them friendship groups. Find the people that are going to be positive influences in your life, that are going to push you to go to the gym or to go and play football or to do well in your career. Do you know that sort of stuff? The positive influences around you, and it might seem like there isn't any, but you've got to go out and find them. This is where I talk about going trying stuff, going for trying clubs and football teams and all that sort of stuff. What you can do when you're a little bit younger, or even when you're cracking on music or art or whatever it is you might want to do. And I guarantee there's plenty of positive influences around, and good friends that you can find along the way. And again, you meet a lot of good people in recovery. So when you think your friends are your best mates and you can't leave them, I tell you, some of the people I've met in recovery, Alex, are some of the most giving, kind, caring, loyal people I've ever met.
Mm.
And they all come from addiction. I know there's a big stigma, going off a
Mm.
bit of a tangent here, but it's something I'm very passionate about. So yeah, just to recap, yeah, pretty much what I've just said, mate. It's breaking away from them old habits and routines and friends and behaviours. Things have to change, Nothing changes if nothing changes, does it? Something I say, dead simple, but for me, it's effective. Everything changed in my life, and that then led to behaviour changes and sort of things spiral on from there. Then,
Yeah. Well, Finn, keep up the great work. I admire greatly what you're doing. And, just as Finn said, if you're in a situation where ketamine is invading your life or your family, then reach out, either speak to Finley, contact me. There's lots of other places. There's Alicia House. There's the use the numbers, Samaritans. If you reach in rock bottom, just talk to somebody and I know from experience these people will signpost you, they'll help you, will support you, and together we're trying to kick out ketamine and Finley, just thanks for coming on and much appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And also as well, Alex, thank you for the work you're doing. You know, you said a minute ago about not being an expert, but look, doesn't always being there yourself doesn't always make you an expert, does it? You know, you've got to be able to communicate where you've been and learn from it and try and teach others. But so you said it, you know, you are an expert in some senses, yeah. You know, because you're hearing the stories, you're seeing the experiences, you're putting yourself. You know, you don't need to be doing what you're doing, really, do you? No one's putting a gun to your head and saying, go and try and kick cat out and help people and back people and do this. You know, you're doing that out of the goodness of your heart, Alex. So, you know, I've got a lot of time for you, mate. I really have, and thank you as well for the stuff that you're doing in the community because you know there's quite a lot of people that have come to us off the back of you saying, "Go and have a word with Finn and Kez." So that's
That's good.
you
I
know,
think there's a bromance building here, Finn.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
brilliant,
listen, I'm saying, see, you know, we'll keep in touch, and we're always in touch, aren't we? So,
yeah,
but thanks for sharing an update, and we'll do another one. We'll do another one in a few months and see how we can keep moving this forward. But for now, Finn, thanks
brilliant.
for coming on the Godcast. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.